Hello everyone, how are you doing? Alright, I've got two stories that I'm going to read to you tonight. One of them is horror, and that's what I write normally. Horror is just a polite way of saying I like to murder fictional people for fun. And the second story I have is more of a classic science fiction out of Flash Gordon. So something that will hopefully rend your soul into tiny pieces and something that will make you laugh or just be inspired. So either way, it would be good. First story I'm going to read is a section from The Tunnelers, which is the first story that I've had published professionally. Released in 2011, and there's some nice cute bookmarks on the table over there if you want to see what it's like. Essentially, it's what we call a found manuscript story. So there's the story of the narrator encountering something horrible, but what is horrible is encoded in a document which relates another story that was a horrible thing that happened to somebody else. So there's a story within a story. So when the inner one resolves itself, usually something nasty happens to the narrator, then you finally get the 1-2 punch. So I'm going to read two sections. So first is the prologue, and then the next part is the inner story of the doctor. And I think it'll become pretty clear what it's about. The following document, as well as a bundle of newspaper clippings, was found among the personal effects of Dr. Vincent Armstrong, a community psychiatrist in the evaluation unit at the Royal Ottawa Mental Health Care Centre, whose disappearance in Montreal is a matter of public record. Although the police dismissed the package as being immaterial to their investigation, I believe that this information has a profound, almost sinister significance when considered in relation to recent events of a more personal nature. I will let the reader decide. And now we go to the doctor's notes. June 23rd, 1992, 10 a.m. It's a well-known fact that the subconscious mind is very good at blocking out troublesome memories if it perceives that accessing them will induce trauma. Kirkwood's case was no different. I was told that he had returned to his senses sometime overnight, so I went to see him. He had absolutely no recollection of our earlier conversation. In fact, rather eerily to me, he said he felt fine. He asked to be discharged. I decided to try a different strategy by triggering his memories gradually to see if he might be able to add to what I'd learned so far. Mr. Kirkwood, can you please tell me what you do? Oh, sure, I'm a safety inspector for Argus Minerals. I visit work sites and make sure all the safety regs are being followed. You know, mining's a dangerous business. I see. So, which site did you visit most recently? Well, let's see. That would be McIntyre Mine up near Timmins. Yeah, lots of proven gold deposits up there. Maybe even some platinum, they say. The surveys are right. I started digging about a year ago. Ah, sounds like a busy job. How do you prepare for the visit? Well, you know, I look over the site history, how long it's been going, what they found, incidents, that sort of thing. Oh, incidents? What sort? Well, you know, you got labor issues, equipment malfunctions, problems with communities nearby, security, environmentalists, you know, basically anything that might affect operations. Well, Mr. Kirkwood, do you remember anything that stood out about the McIntyre mine? Kirkwood frowned and paused for a moment. Can't say as I recall. It's weird. My memory's a bit fuzzy. I decided to press a bit further. The site is near Timmins, you said. He nodded, and I continued. There are several First Nations nearby, isn't that right? Were there land disputes or some other problem? No. We got it fair and square from the feds. It's near the Matagami First Nation. Their land's a few miles down the road. But now that you mention it, there was some kind of dispute just as we were setting up. They didn't want us to dig because Kirkwood's brow furrowed in concentration. I was afraid he would have another relapse if he'd made the connection, so I ended the interview. I thanked him for his time, and I promised to get him discharged as soon as possible. I should note here that in all respects, save for the trauma associated with certain memories, Kirkwood seemed to be in perfect mental health. He interacted well with staff and other patients. He showed a healthy interest in his surroundings and appeared to have no phobias associated with the incident that might affect his ability to function normally in society. Given that, and his request to be discharged, the administration told me that we'd be hard-pressed to keep him under observation for much longer. I was told that Kirkwood was to be given free run of the hospital grounds in preparation for his eventual release. June 25th, 1992, evening. The true seriousness of the patient's condition has become all too clear to me. I had the day off today, but I received a call from someone on duty. Today was Kirkwood's first day of relative freedom. It was a lovely sunny day, a nice contrast to the sterile hospital atmosphere. Kirkwood walked along one of the forested paths, enjoying his time outdoors and taking in his surroundings. According to witnesses, he'd only been walking for a few minutes when he stopped suddenly with a jolt. Remaining stock still, he cocked his head slightly, as though straining to hear something. A minute or two passed, and he slowly looked down at the ground right in front of him, and then gingerly began to back up. Not once did he move his gaze from that spot. As he backed away, his unease quickly gave way to apprehension and full panic. It was about this time that many witnesses reported several loud screams and Kirkwood running towards the nearest door, his face contorted to a mask of primal fear. It took the efforts of 2 attendants and Dr. Michelson to calm him down, and even so, Kirkwood was in a disturbed state until he was brought up to his room on the 2nd floor. All the while, he never stopped muttering under his breath. No one could make sense of what he was saying, but all present agreed that Kirkwood had been rambling about something underground that had finally found him. This is an anthology called Heroes of Mars, and I have a story called Divided Loyalties. The character I created for it is more like the classic action hero, but he grows over the course of that story. So what the whole purpose of Divided Loyalties is, it gets you inside the mindset of a loyal guardian of a city-state in the dying world of Mars, who had basically taken his loyalties for granted. He had been part of a family that had served his city for generations, and all of a sudden the political dynamics had changed, and he had been forced basically to confront who he was and find out what his values really were. So it's an external journey, an external conflict against enemies, but it's also an internal conflict against himself. And when he comes out at the end, he becomes something and someone that he didn't expect he would ever become. So I'm going to read the opening part of the story that sets the scene and will give you an idea of the kind of action that follows. A faint cry, like an animal in agony, interrupted poor Tharic's thoughts. It's close. His hand flew to his sword. He listened. The constant, gentle rustle of blowing sand and salt reached his ears. Bants were known to inhabit the barren flats, and those formidable predators could make all sorts of sounds. He took a cautious step forward, scanning his surroundings. No movement. The cry sounded again. A man calling for help, and it came from over a rise that lay a quarter mile away. Thor dashed ahead, leaping over sucker bushes and large rocks, slowing only when he reached the loose, rocky slope of the rise itself. It was much steeper up close, and he picked his way upwards. A misstep could cause a rock fall. At the top of the ridge lay the charred remains of a flyer bearing the royal emblem of his home city of Syracuse. In the midst of a field of twisted flyer components, smashed crates, and spilled food. Wisps of black smoke rose from the wreck. Thor pulled a viewing prism from his harness pouch and scanned the site at maximum magnification. Blast holes dotted the flyer's fuselage. Not trained marksmen. A pair of legs stuck out from behind an upturned basket on the ground. Thor sprinted to the wreckage. Coarse salt and sand crunched underfoot, and dust devils stirred in the breeze. The scents of burnt flesh and smoke mingled. Thor looked inside the flyer. 2 half-charred, bullet-riddled bodies lay on the bloody deck. One of them still clutched a radium pistol. He turned to the prone figure that he'd seen earlier. The man's harness bore the markings of a guard captain. The wound in his stomach bled freely, but he was still breathing. He flinched at the sound of Thor's approach and opened one eye. His cracked lips twitched. "Are you a man of Syracuse or another bandit?" he rasped. Thor knelt by the man's side. "I am poor Theric, a son of Syracuse like you." A small smile played across the man's worn features. "An honor to meet one who fought to protect our Jed." Memories of the last battle flooded back. Syracuse had been defeated by its ancient rival, Belfor. Thor was the last surviving captain and was escorting his wounded ruler from the battlefield. But he'd been ambushed before he could reach safety. He was an excellent swordsman and fought well, but he couldn't save his master. By the time they brought the Jed's body back to Sarakas, the city was in an uproar, and the Jed's only son, the prince, had failed to return from battle. Claiming that the royal house had fallen, Tolfarin, the general, appointed himself regent. Things got worse after that. Cor nodded in thanks and looked back at the flyer. What was your mission? The prince did not fall in battle, the man whispered. He suspected that Tolfarin would try to seize the throne if the Jed fell. Once he knew it to be true, he planned to sneak away to regroup. He groaned, clutching his midsection. But we were shot down by green men with the Zarquad. Too many to fight. And where is the prince now? The other man shook his head. I did not see. You've done your duty honorably, said Cor. What is your name so that I may remember you? Harad Kodar, the man said. My cousin served under you. Ah, I remembered him well. Marin Kodar. Sarakas is doubly indebted to your family. Harad smiled. Then I would ask one thing of you. Grant me a warrior's death. Cor bowed and helped Harad gently to his feet. He placed a pistol in the guard's trembling hand and closed it around the grip. Harad swayed as he nodded gratefully. Quickly, he urged. Cor drew his sword in a fluid motion and slashed Harad's neck. Blood gushed from as his severed head tumbled to the ground, followed by his body. Cor retrieved his pistol and arranged Harad's corpse into a position of repose. He placed a small knife in Harad's hand. Rest now, for you fell armed in battle, Cor whispered. He stood for a moment in silence. He turned to the crash site. Blood spattered the sand on the other side of the wreck, and several long drag marks led away for some distance before disappearing. Someone had been captured alive, but not without a fight. The abductors had made no effort to hide their tracks. Cor trotted in their wake, his heart soaring. His family had served as royal guards for 15 generations. If the prince lives and has a plan to regain the throne... He reached the hills at sunset. Several thin, black plumes of smoke rose from unseen fires behind the next slope. The wind shifted, carrying the sounds of harsh voices and the faint jingling of harnesses, as well as the tang of strange herbs that made Cor's nostrils itch. He crept closer, peering over the slope's crest. The rays of the setting sun cast the tumbled ruins of a long-dead city into sharp relief. In growing shadows, campfires burned like stars. He drew his radium pistol and advanced slowly. Noises traveled farther at night, and green men had exceptional hearing. He crept down the slope, careful of loose rocks. His path took him through a field of spongy moss where he jogged to close the remaining distance. By the time he reached the far end of the field, the nearest part of the ruins lay only a few dozen feet ahead. He hid behind a section of broken wall, peering through it. Half a dozen green men sat around a fire. A good day, said one. It'd be better if there'd been more loot, grumbled a second, who had only 3 arms. You're just angry you didn't earn a larger share, said the first. The other stiffened. Your shot brought down the flyer, but I killed one of the crew. Yes, said the first, but the honor goes to Vol. He dines with the Jedak. Cor perked up at those words. He scanned the many fires. What honor? Which tent would be the Jedak's? If the prince was alive, he would be there. A thoat brayed in the darkness behind him. The warriors tensed. One man stood uneasily and cocked his head. Everyone remained still while he peered into the darkness. He plopped back down. Cor released his breath softly and crept towards the source of the noise. His searching hands met nothing but cool night air for several long moments as they brushed against a waist-high wall made of large slabs of broken stone. The corral. Cor squinted into the gloom. The thoats were nipping at whatever moss they could find on the ground while the others paced about. Further along the wall, he felt a gate. He unlatched and braced it open with a chunk of fallen masonry and entered the corral. Some of the man-sized beasts escaped as soon as he got out of the way, while others stamped their 8 legs in uncertainty. Though some snorted in irritation at his prodding, he drove them all towards the campfire. His efforts were rewarded by shouts of alarm. One man's slurred voice rang out clearly in the night air. Get those thoats under control, I'll go tell the Jedak. The green man's form was silhouetted against the fire as he jerked upright and staggered to the darkness. Cor ran in pursuit.